Greetings, everybody. Maryn here, about to start our weekly Midwife Monday live. Hopefully the time zone correction has been made on more people's part this week. It was nobody's fault last week. The social app we use was kind of confused. So I'm hoping more people show up today. That's what I'm trying to say. So how is everybody doing on this beautiful Monday? Spring equinox happened this weekend. So we are officially in spring energy, which I don't know about you, feels really good here, even though warmth and temperature and all of that is typically getting warmer everywhere, and here for sure anyway. More just the palpable, like, creative flair that I'm feeling, you know? Winter is past, kind of the waiting and watching energy that I felt at least this past winter, especially having a new baby. Feels like it has moved into this, amazing creative space, energetically and practically, as our family is starting to purge items and clean up the house, get rid of things, and prepare to move at some point this summer. So that's what I'm feeling today about all that. Let's see, current events. Well, we did have a free indie birth workshop in this very space just 2 days ago on Saturday. And these workshops are pretty amazing. I definitely am feeling sort of sad, maybe, that was probably the last one in this space. Not to say that I won't teach it wherever I land, but it'll definitely be different, I'm sure. No matter where we end up, just we'll be in a different place. So we had, 30 people here in this room on Saturday. And it's always so fantastic to see just what people come out for this. And it's usually a pretty varied group, and this was a very varied group. And so by that, I mean, there were a couple of guys, which is always very nice and welcome. There were young women. I think one in particular who was super smart and wants to be a midwife, I found out was only 18. I was like, wow, what a smart young woman, not had babies of her own yet, but questioning all of this stuff is really cool. Pregnant women for sure, and lots of potential doulas and midwives. So that's feeling really synchronistic for me, actually. Taking some time off from births here and knowing I'll always be in that space, I think, of actually witnessing birth happen. But right now, feeling more comfortable and drawn to creating more midwives and doulas. And also, yes, continuing to support pregnant women, at least virtually. I'll probably talk more about that. So yeah, it's always cool to see who shows up to these classes. It always kind of shows me where the energy is flowing for myself too. So it was super exciting to meet so many women that have thought about becoming midwives and had so many questions. And like, there was one woman in particular that literally got teary-eyed when she realized, through the course of the workshop, that this sort of midwifery actually exists. She wasn't aware that it does, or did. And in many places, and people come from all over for this workshop, Arizona, of course, where licensed midwifery is like the most popular thing, Colorado, California, these are all states that are pretty heavily regulated for midwives. And so when those people come and they learn about how birth works and how midwifery can look, they're usually pretty shocked. So it makes me feel just very good and validated about the work we're doing. And of course, we'd love to see so many of those people take a step onto the doula path or the midwifery path and get going. I don't know if there's ever a good time, but anyway. So if people have questions or topics, I'd love to hear them. This always feels a little lonely, to be honest. It's a very odd feeling. And having just gotten off the phone or, the computer rather, with some virtual prenatal women this morning, it's feeling extra weird because there's no one to talk to. So feel free to ask a question or just say hello or say if you're watching. That really makes it feel a little less awkward. All right, let's see. So the free workshop this weekend, that was really fun. Trying to think if anything else came up from that. Well, it's hard to, I guess, share with you the whole workshop because it's 3.5 hours. And I did redo the workshop presentation recently. So maybe you've been here years ago, or maybe you've been to someone else teaching the Indie Birth workshop where you live. And that is a different version than I'm currently doing. So my version, to be brief, is yes, the hormones of labor. So we want to talk about how birth works. And then the second and third parts, which are new, the second part is what does doing the inner work when you're pregnant mean? And just some observations there, some suggestions, lots of questions people have. It really is strange to me that this isn't common conversation. So, someone mentioned they're pregnant. She was here pregnant and said, I have a great midwife. I feel very cared for in a medical sense, but she's not really talking about these other things with me, and I want to talk about them. So that's great to just seek the support you need. But also, just on a midwifery side, it's so surprising to me because I just can't imagine only dealing with someone as a physical being, right? Taking their blood pressure, having them pee on a stick. And for me, calling that midwifery care, I get that midwifery care does look like that in a lot of places, and maybe that's fine with a lot of women, but it's just strange to me now. So the second part of the class is this inner work. What does that mean? What are some of the issues that might come up? Talking about the mother wound and birth trauma, that kind of cool stuff. And then the third part is choosing your birth team. And I feel like that's a really cool way to end it, even though it does leave people kind of hanging in a lot of cases because they might be working with licensed midwives. They might be going to a hospital. And I think it leaves a lot of people feeling like, okay, well, what do I do with all of this information now? And what I've noticed is there's definitely people that are super open. And then there's definitely people that aren't as open. And it's fun. I don't know. That's maybe kind of mean. It's kind of fun to watch their faces throughout the workshop, especially the people that feel a little bit more closed off. They have lots of questions about the birth team part in particular, and they really are struggling to mentally integrate how what they're hearing goes with what they've chosen. So they're hearing about the way medicalized midwifery works and licensing and how when push comes to shove, many women are found to be outside of that box. So you're a pregnant woman, you've hired a licensed midwife. What do you do if you go to 42 weeks, right? These are good questions that we ask people. And again, they're trying to mentally figure out, what does this mean for me? How would I handle this? Or they're just in shock. They're like, I had no idea that if I chose a licensed midwife, that this would potentially be a situation I'd find myself in. And of course, no one knows. No one knows if they'll find themselves in there. That's sort of the point. It's very, it's an unknown, so that's a great example. Another example I usually paint is, what if your water is open before labor and your midwife says, you have till 12 o'clock tonight to produce a baby. It doesn't fit, it doesn't fit with the hormones of labor discussion that we've had. There's lots of questions people have. So it's a really fun workshop. I love teaching it. It's free. And it is, I think, one of the coolest things that we've come up with. And if I can speak for, just this community here in the last 5 years I've been teaching it, I think it's super valuable. My goal isn't to get more clients from it. My goal is to really just spread information and have people ask themselves the hard questions. I don't even think they're mine to be asking. I think we present the information, and with this new version of the workshop, I showed probably 9 or 10 different videos, which are the best teaching tools ever. And I'm so grateful to my clients because they're all videos that are from my clients. I'm so grateful to them for sharing their intimate birth space with people they don't even know. And I think it's just a really amazing teaching tool. There's nothing like feeling even the energy of a birth video and all of the questions that come up. And I do want to maybe cover a couple of the questions that came up in a bit because, people are curious about all things, which is great. So super grateful to all those people for sharing their birth videos. And also, I don't know a whole lot of midwives, at least around here, that are showing their clients' birth videos with permission, of course, as a mode of teaching and, transparency. So I feel really good about that. And wherever I wind up, still to be determined, wherever our family is moving, I hope that I can continue doing this for whatever community I'm in, and we'll see. Of course, I hope they're receptive, but I don't know. I don't know where I'll wind up. And it could be that, it really shakes things up wherever I land, because it is a really intense workshop in the sense of, I think, honest information and realness, real birth videos, real conversations, things people don't often want to talk about. Those things come up. In fact, I'm appreciative of the person there who may be watching that said, these conversations don't happen a whole lot. So super grateful to, and she referenced the whole room full of people, which she should have, right? It wasn't just me. But thank you to all the people here for wanting to learn and wanting to open up these conversations that are kind of taboo in a lot of communities. So super awesome. That's great, Jill. It's really cool. We do have people teaching this all over the world. So if you're in our Birth Warrior Project doula training, that is a perk of that amazing course. You'll have access to this workshop and teaching instructions and encouragement and support to teach this where you live. And hands down, it is the best thing I've done for my community and for myself, to just feel like I'm contributing. And I totally come across the right people for me too, as a midwifery client. So it is a win all around. All right. Please post your questions in the box, or just tell me that you're here and you're watching. Hi, Patty. So nice to see familiar faces. Juice from the juicery down the street. What else was I going to talk about? Oh, so I started the day with a podcast with a really amazing woman that you should check out, and who I've mentioned before, but I'll post it when the podcast is up because I was on her podcast this morning, but I totally want to have her on mine. So either way, you're going to get to know her, and her name is Devin, and she's beautiful and brilliant and not a midwife. She's actually not in the birth world, so to speak, but it kind of doesn't matter. She's just a goddess and, a teacher of the feminine and a holder of wisdom. And so I found her online actually a couple of months ago. I was searching for, what was I searching for? I think I was searching for embodiment practices. Just, my daily kind of search, right? And I came across her site. And I did mention this on another live, but I ended up taking her yoni exploration course. 3-day course. I think it was like $100. And I was just intrigued, I figured I didn't have a lot to lose. I had read through her stuff. the blog post she has. I had listened to a little bit of her podcast, and I immediately felt totally resonant, like this is a sister. So I took her yoni exploration course, and it did not disappoint. It was a really amazing course. She's just really tapped in to herself and to divine wisdom, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I would recommend that hands down to anyone. I'm hoping maybe my oldest daughter will want to take it. You should totally check that out. And so, yeah, I connected with Devin over this course, just saying, hey, thanks. This course is great. Thank you so much. And she asked me to be on her podcast, which is super fun and was an honor. So I'll put that out there in our community once she releases it. And I think it was a great conversation, really. I don't even remember what we talked about. I'll have to listen to it again, I guess, if I want, those moments when you're just in your zone talking with someone that totally understands. I think we talked about autonomy and women's healing and the mother wound. She's just a really brilliant writer and woman. So anyway, look forward to that podcast when she releases it with Devin. And I will interview her on mine as well soon, because I really want to talk more about her yoni course and the work that she does specifically. Along the lines of podcasts, Nathan and I also have a new project, a brand new podcast that is now out in the airwaves. So I don't know, it's like Podcast Monday, even though it's not. Lots of podcasts out there today that I'm a part of. I don't know. But this is a new project, and I've mentioned it, but it is official. The first episode has been released, and it's called The One About the Midwife and the OB. So, yeah, you'll get the link if you don't have it somewhere. It'll be posted on Instagram this week and probably our social. And if you're on Telegram, I posted it there today. I'll probably put it in the newsletter. I'm not sure that it's searchable yet in iTunes, but it is there. So that's a little weird. But anyway, the first episode is just us talking about what we're going to talk about, as silly as that might sound. It's only like 15 minutes long. And so if you don't know Nathan, he's an OB. He's a great friend, smart man, funny guy. We're just starting a project together, and we'll see how it goes. We don't have it all worked out in the sense of like how long we'll do it or exactly what we'll talk about. But we'd also love to hear from people. So if you want to hear what a midwife and an OB should, if you want to suggest, not hear, if you would like to suggest something for us to talk about, we'd love to hear it. And we have a new website for that. It's themidwifeandtheob.org, not com. themidwifeandtheob.org. So check that out. Super simple website, but you can submit a form there with some suggestions or, comments or whatever. And we'll probably take those to heart, because I think we definitely do want to hit on the topics that feel most relevant and resonant for our listeners. And I don't even know who those people are. It might be you, might be some of his people from his podcast. And I'm hoping, and I think this is the hope for both of us, we're hoping that it kind of attracts a whole new group of people that might be curious about any of it, all of it. Maybe they don't know anything about midwifery. Maybe they don't know anything about obstetrics. I don't know. We'll see. So that is the podcast in review this morning. And yes, hi, Honesty. Yes, and I do a podcast my own on Fridays. So by the time it gets out there, yep, it's about today, Saturday, Sunday today. And yeah, I did a pretty short podcast last week because I was already away from Rumi for quite some time. So yeah, I gave some book recommendations, and that's awesome. Yeah, I need to review that book, as I mentioned, The Surrender Experiment. That is totally my life right now. I'm just watching it come in. I'm trying. Well, and trying is even the wrong word. I'm intending to just let it flow and see what comes into my awareness as far as moving goes. I'm refraining from taking really concrete action with any of it. So having some really nice exchanges with people about properties and possibilities, and just seeing what results from that without feeling like I'm kind of squashing the magic of it, because I totally can do that. I know I can. I think you know what I mean, right? It's like, no, I'm going to call again. No, I'm going to do this thing. They're not responding to me. And I'm just like sitting in that feeling of, I don't know. I don't know what's supposed to happen, but pushing the river is not feeling right either. So it's been a daily practice. And I don't know. I really don't know where we'll wind up or exactly how this will go. And that's probably a healthy place to be because, how could I know? And we still have a couple of months. So my trust is real. And I think it'll work out beautifully when it's time. It's just not time yet. And again, equinox, important energy, kind of feeling into all of that and how it relates to my own life. And knowing that things are being seeded, right? It's like that's spring. The flowers don't just like bloom out of nowhere. Like they've been seeded. And I think the intention to grow something really awesome for our family is where we're at. So we'll see. Oh, good. I'm glad you figured out how to comment, Becca. I know I've heard people say that, and I don't know what the problem is, other than if you don't download the app and blah, 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 blah. But it's fairly easy for me to comment. So it's always nice to hear that people are watching. Thank you so much. Podcasts. I know this turned into like a podcast discussion. A mothering episode about the teen years. Sure. I'm very open to suggestion, especially, well, all around really, but especially with the mothering series, because I feel similarly to the way Nathan and I do about our project with the mothering. I'm not sure I'm going to do like 100 episodes of mothering, right? I think I'm at 8. And so I might be wrapping that up soon unless I really come up with some more ideas. But I like that idea, Jill. I think teen years are interesting in so many ways. Like the experience is interesting. And then also, I think the cultural expectation of teenagers is something I've thought a lot about because my kids, I don't think, are very typical. And I don't mean they're perfect in any sense. I mean, they are perfect, but we just haven't had a typical teenager experience, I don't think, thus far. But I think a lot of it is like cultural overlay. So maybe I should talk about that. Oh, thank you, Honesty. Thank you. Yeah, I know you've moved a lot too. And we have, in my past, we moved so often when Jason and I were, pre-kids. We moved a lot, and we moved a lot when the oldest kids were young. So yes, I've been there. We haven't moved for the last 8 years. So in some ways it's feeling new, and in some ways it's feeling just like another one of those times. So yeah, I don't know. Thanks for support, everybody. I appreciate it. I'm just feeling that is meaningful. And it reminds me that, again, I should have trust in all of it. That was sweet. Hi, Zara. That's awesome. Yes, I am so glad you could be here. And maybe that was a good reason to change the time of this thing so that people on the other side of the world possibly had an easier time of being here. I'm not sure. But it's so great. So great to hear from those of you that are watching. Okay, what else? Well, my day in review was the podcast with Devin. I only have virtual visits today. And again, that's where the energy is going for me right now. I don't have a lot of clients here for obvious reasons. I'm not going to take on a bunch of people if I'm unsure of what's to come for me. So virtual visits. I think that's the rest of my day. And so far, it's been amazing. What I love about doing the virtual prenatals is the power of these women, and they're here too, but there's something about having the whole world open to the possibilities of talking with women, right? So there's a small community here, lots of awesome women, but when I open it up to the whole world, obviously, like there's so many more awesome women. And I feel so humbled and honored to hold space even in this way, virtually, for these women doing these amazing things and this kick-ass work in their own pregnancies and, sorting out their mother issues and claiming their power and all of it. So that's the short version, but I'm excited to see what the rest of the day holds as far as virtual prenatals go. And I'm looking forward to, each and every one that I have coming up. There's quite a lot coming up, and I'm still trying to keep them to Mondays. So excited to talk with you, Odyssey, just as a chat, and whoever else signs up for one. It's been really awesome. And again, just the way I'm feeling most useful and where my energy is best right now. So let's see. I see your question, Patty. I did not ignore you. I can talk about nuchal cords. I might kind of combine a couple of topics for a couple of reasons. First, this won't be too much longer because I have more to do today. And second, it kind of piggybacks on a thing I already mentioned, which is having this free workshop over the weekend, showing lots of birth videos, and having a specific question come this morning from someone that attended the workshop. And so I thought I'd address that. So let me explain what I'm talking about. I think of the 10-ish birth videos that we show on the workshop day. They're all clients of mine, as I said, and 9 out of 10 are just completely beautiful, normal, untouched, unhindered births. Doesn't mean those women didn't work hard, all of that good stuff. But from my end, there was nothing to do except be there and film the video, even though some of the births have variations of normal. And so that's where some of these conversations come in. So, one in particular I can think of, well, a couple actually, like the baby's head is out of the mother's body for quite some time. And, we're talking 4 or 5 minutes-ish, maybe even 6 minutes with the one. But there's no problem. There's no problem. There's no hang up. There's no tight cord. There's no shoulder dystocia. There's nothing wrong. And that's a really cool thing for people to see, because that is not normal. Like even in midwifery, watch enough midwife attended births on YouTube, and you're going to see a lot of impatience, and you're going to see a lot of like delivering babies and rotation and pulling out a baby. Yes, even at home births. So there's so many topics there. But that's something I like to show people. And of course, the disclaimer is not all babies that have a head out for this long are, okay. Like that's where a midwifery training comes in. So that was kind of the question. How do you know when a baby's head is out, if it's too long or if something else is going on? And yes, the person who asked, thank you very much, totally agreed. Like, yes, there's midwifery school. And ultimately, if you're curious about those kind of questions, I think that's probably the place for you, because people like us are fascinated by such topics. And it really is very in-depth, the school and the question. So I'll give you the short answer. The short answer is a baby, when in utero, goes through a series of rotations. They are called the cardinal movements of labor. So you can busy yourself with looking that up and reading in textbooks if you desire, but there is a way the baby moves through the pelvis. And we think we know that, so whatever. I think that's mostly true. So as a midwife, you are watching for that in a way that you can observe. And truthfully, with a head down baby, those movements are largely taking place inside the mother's body. That's one thing I love about breech birth, to be honest. I mean, I love breech birth anyway, but there's something so visually pleasing about breech birth because you actually get to see the rotations on the outside of the mother's body. And therefore, it's also easier in a sense to know when things have gone awry. I'm talking about breech, right? So if the baby isn't following the formula, then even as a hands-off practitioner, we're taught when to intervene. So there's something very satisfying about that. But head down babies are not visible for obvious reasons in the same way. So we have a knowledge of the rotation, and we're just kind of watching and waiting for the baby to do what we think the baby should do. We're also watching for how the baby is doing, right? So we're watching the baby's color for signs of health, and we're watching the response that the baby is already making to life on the outside. Have any of you ever seen a baby, even on a video, blink and move their little lips and, funny little things that show they are responding? They're not compromised. They're not out of it. They are responding to life. And so we are watching for color. We are watching for that sense of like the baby participating. We need a baby that's participating in their birth and their rotations. And that's a really great thing to remember for breech birth, actually. But even with head down babies, they're obviously doing the same thing. So that's what we're watching for. And yes, we're also watching the time. We're watching the time so that we just know how many minutes have gone by and how many contractions have gone by. Because there will be women, and again, this is one of the videos we show, and these videos are largely in 13 moons. So if you're not in that course, really, you should go do it because it's still pay what you can. indiebirth.org/13 moons. So you can watch a lot of these videos I'm referencing. But in the one, the mother is still contracting regularly. So that's usually like every 2 minutes or every minute and a half at that point when someone is pushing and when the head's out. So we're just noting that, we're noting what's going on. Is someone, in the process of getting this baby out, and what is the timeline? So we're noting all of those things. And it's really, yes, the condition of the baby, that's the most important. If a baby isn't doing well, and this was the 10th video that we show, my friend Christina, who has a podcast out there, if you haven't heard it, it's called The Indie Birth of Veda Rose. She truly had a stuck baby, and she ends up resuscitating the baby in the video. And the podcast is a great chat about how that birth was for her. I was her midwife, and I'm her friend. So yeah, we do show that 10th video where it's not okay. That baby is not coming out. Sorry, interruption. Jason, if you're watching, the dogs have a grooming appointment. I know that's a weird personal thing to say, but that's what's happening here on my phone. My little bratty Aussies have a very full coat, and they are needing to get their hairs cut today. So, personal announcement. And I guess I could text him. Let me take a second and do that. Okay, sorry. Well, nothing like alive to get a phone call about your dog's haircuts. So yeah, so anyway, that 10th video, Christina's birth, that these people have the honor of watching and witnessing, that baby is not okay. And the baby does need help in getting out, and that it was, in my experience, a true shoulder dystocia. And she was not coming out on her own. So it's not always okay to have a baby with the head out. And it can turn like that, meaning that a baby can be doing fine. You're assessing all the signs. The baby's looking good. There is no rush, although you can always have the mom change position. If you can't move the baby, move the mom. So it's like there are things to maybe facilitate that are less interventive if you feel like that's the case. But then it can also change in an instant. So a baby that looked well 1 second, literally the next second is not well. And that was my experience with Christina's birth. And so I say to her in the video, can I help you get the baby out? Okay, I have to just take care of this for a minute. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay. Sorry, but real life here. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers the question. But I guess, let me leave you with that to think about and ponder and to watch more birth videos. And yes, if you're not a midwife, I think it's it's a tall order for you to feel like, oh God, yes, I understand. I totally get it. Because even when you're in it, sometimes you're like, what's happening here? And you might err on the side of helping someone, and they don't really need it. Like there's all kinds of uncertainties there. And I think a lot of it is intuition. So to answer the initial question, how do you know? All of the things I've said, oh dear, but also just how do you intuitively feel about this birth, this mom? Do you feel like the baby needs help? Is the mom participating? Is the mom panicked? I think that's really important. And so with Christina, I know her really well. She's a really good friend. And she started to get, I don't know if panicky is the right word, but like she couldn't get her own baby out. So, that happens rarely and it's no fault of hers. It wasn't her not being connected or powerful or strong. It was just a matter of mathematics and she needed help. Okay, please bring the dogs. The lady that cuts their hair is absolutely hysterical and I feel really bad that we totally forgot to honor our appointment. She's a really awesome lady. And, can you imagine grooming dogs all day? She's got a great personality. She thinks they're all adorable and sweet, which of course, they're not always. But anyway, they're going to do that. So Patty, to kind of get back to your question, at least briefly, in that set of videos that we're showing, there's also some babies that are born with cord around their neck. And mine, Cove's, is one of them. So if you haven't seen that birth, definitely it's a good one for that. Cove was born with meconium. She was born with the sac around her face, and she was born with cord around her neck. And none of those things, in her case, in my case, were any kind of emergency and anything but normal. So again, the disclaimer is always 100% of those situations aren't always normal. But as far as cord around the neck, there's a podcast episode. I think it's one of the Q&As where I talk more about that. So you can go listen to that, Patty. I think it's the January Q&A. Someone asked about cord around the neck. So there's more of an explanation in there. But the short version is, no, that's not an emergency. That's rarely an actual reason for a C-section. What typically happens is the mom has a C-section for some other reason, usually impatience, right? But maybe there's something else. And then when they go to do the cesarean, they see that the baby has cord and they blame the cord. So as Rachel Reed would say, it is just the scapegoat. The cord isn't actually the problem. It's just a scapegoat. It's just, a label on there to make everybody feel like, oh God, thank heavens we did the C-section, this baby couldn't have been born. And that is so rarely the case. I've seen babies born at home with cord around the neck. My son, my first home birth, my second baby, the one that should have brought my dogs to the groomer, had cord 3 times around his neck and once around his armpit. And he was born at home in a birth pool. So it was not an emergency. I've seen babies with short cords, tight cords, and knock on wood, is there wood anywhere? I don't know, somewhere. I'll knock right here. I've never seen a cord at home prohibit a baby from being born. And I've never had to do anything crazy like, cut a cord on the perineum or anything like that. So yeah, these are the stories that our culture tells women. And so there are resources, there is support, there is information, as you're saying, Patty, that women have to be open to hearing. I think that's kind of the bottom line there too. It's like, yeah, we can say to them, that's bullshit. And we can know that's true, but someone has to actually be open to hearing that because it is probably a state of trauma and sort of like victimhood, right? For lack of a better way of saying it, that a lot of women find themselves in after birth. And they truly have this feeling, at least for a little while, that if they hadn't, whatever it is, fill in the blank, if they hadn't gone to the hospital, if they hadn't had a C-section, then things wouldn't have been okay. And you know what? There's no way of telling. That's all. There's no way of telling what's true and what's not true. So unfortunately, or fortunately, people have to unravel that themselves. But I think there's great help for that too, if they want to. Yeah, I don't know. And the NICU, I mean, the NICU is one of the saddest places, I think, in Western medicalized birth. And not that it's not needed sometimes, it is sometimes, but it's also a really, really, let's see, how do I say it? It's not the most sensitive place in most hospitals. And it's severely behind the times, like severely behind the times with how to care for babies that might need extra help and how the parents are involved in kangaroo care and all of these things that we know are important. And somehow, NICU culture has chosen to ignore. And I don't know, you might have a really awesome NICU where you live, but it's not the case here. And I don't think it's the case in many places. So anyway, I hope this dog thing is being remedied. I think it is. I don't know if there are any more questions along the lines of that would fit into this conversation a little better right now. So nuchal cord, shoulder dystocia, heads being out for a long time. Those are kind of the topics we've honed in on today. So definitely check out those resources though, if you haven't. So the podcast with Christina, it's called The Indie Birth of Veda Rose. 13 Moons, if you want to watch some of these birth videos, and then, you'll be able to figure out what you think and what's normal. And I do think you don't have to be a midwife to do that and to learn. So that's what I love doing here in this free workshop. This is not a room full of midwives. These are just people. Some of them are going to have babies. What's normal? What does it look like when a baby's head is out and everything's fine? What does it look like when it's not fine? When a baby is out, what does it look like when a baby needs help breathing? What does it look like when they're just transitioning slowly? And again, some of these are really deep clinical answers and also spiritual answers, I think. But just from a felt level of perception, what do you feel? What do you feel when you see this? Does it make you nervous? Because that's another cool conversation, is just assessing your own reaction / response to watching births. That's how we grow. That's how we learn. That's how we learn more about ourselves and where our fears are. So birth videos are very valuable in that way more than you may have thought at first glance. Yes, it's cool to watch babies come out, but there's so much to learn there about yourself and everything. All right. The reasons for emergency situations for a cesarean birth. The couple that come to mind that I think almost everyone, and there might be some outliers, would agree a cesarean is necessary, comes back to more logistics, because there's a huge gray area. And right, that's what you're saying here. Only the 1% to 2% that actually are needed. What are those reasons? Because the gray area is the 35+% or whatever, 40%, yikes, where we're assuming they're not actually needed. But again, it's a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole. People are told certain things and they prepare in a certain way. And so I'm not going to go there. But for the 1% or 2% that are truly needed, the situations that come to mind would be a placenta previa. So a placenta completely blocking the cervix. I mean, just a baby cannot get out past that. It's not possible. I don't know of a way that would be possible. Low-lying placentas are different, so I'm not saying that. I'm saying a full-blown placenta previa, yes, C-section. Another reason would be, and we're taught these things, I don't have experience with a transverse baby in labor, but that would be another reason, right? So a baby laying this way, laying horizontally in the uterus, and, the person's really, truly in active labor, and nobody can get the baby to turn in any which way, and whatever a shoulder is presenting, yes, then I would agree that baby is probably going to need surgical help. What other reasons? Yeah, I mean, you can see that there are far and few between absolutely agreed upon. I think some of the other stuff is maybe debatable, and or like a C-section wouldn't necessarily be helpful. Like placental abruptions or uterine rupture. I mean, those things unfortunately can happen before cesarean is possible, even in the hospital. So I think that would be nice if a cesarean could, save every baby in a situation like that. But of course, that's not true either. As for other reasons, I don't know. Maybe people have some ideas. My brain is blanking on anything true disproportion between a baby's head and a mother's pelvis. But again, that's getting into the gray area. But I'm sure there's a super, 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 super tiny percentage that might fit into that category. Like this baby's just not coming out at all for whatever reason. And, if left to just go on, mom and baby potentially wouldn't survive. Like that does happen, I'm sure, super rarely. But yeah, a C-section would be a good idea in that case. But yes, we do know that they are way overdone, and that really wasn't the question anyway. Cool. Any last questions or thoughts? I'm going to wrap this up and go home to my baby for a little bit before doing some more virtual prenatals, which, like I said, are so fun. And if you are wanting to do one of those, you can go to the indiebirth.org site and click on virtual prenatals at the top. And you can pick Margot or myself. You can do one with either of us. And if you want to do one with me, once you pay and register, you will get an email with a link to pick a calendar time. So that's currently the way it's set up. And I'm not booking that far out, like maybe a week or 2 or 3. And I'm flexible too. If someone has like a super urgent need, then you can email me and we can try to do it sooner. Because I know for some people, if they're at the end of their pregnancy or whatever, that might be relevant for them. Cool. Well, thanks for watching. I have not seen a full placenta previa. I'm trying to think. Well, obviously, and someone just asked this question on our social network. I think it's obvious, but if it's not, it should become obvious. Like a completely undiagnosed previa with no bleeding and a baby that just seems like it's completely engaged in a normal position. That would be pretty rare. I'm sure, again, it's happened just because nothing is 100%. So in other words, if you had a client or you yourself had a full previa, you'd probably have some clues leading up to that, probably. And if not, any extreme bleeding would warrant a visit to the ER, in my opinion anyway. So yeah, luckily I have not seen that. I have seen an abruption. Someone in my practice had an abruption a couple of years ago, and she had the abruption in pregnancy. And it healed. It was this much of the placenta probably. So it looked like a lot of blood, but it did heal. And she did go on to have a really fantastic home birth. So, full abruptions, not cool, especially during labor. And this was not reassuring to her or I at the time to have bleeding in her pregnancy, but it all worked out. So, these actual, catastrophic situations, thank goodness, are pretty rare too. And on that happy note, yeah, let's end this for today. So thank you for watching, everybody. I'm so glad the time zone thing appears to have mostly gotten worked out. And I would love to see you here next week. And I would love to know your questions. So you can email me, Maryn@indiebirth.org. Find me on our social network. If you're not on there, it's free. You should totally join. social.indiebirth.org. Just cool conversations, other people like you all, and you can message me there. So it really does help to have a couple of things in my back pocket to talk about, because otherwise, I don't know, I could start pulling midwifery books off the shelf, I guess. All right, everybody, have a great day. Lots of love here from Sedona.